What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Served on the Rocks, powered by Living in Colorado, the Mile High Perspective on YouTube, and Fathom Realty. My name is Charlie Sardelli, and I'm here with
Jameson Amaros.
And Oscar took a little trip to Detroit this week. So, again, he's with us in spirit in the barrel.
Spirit of barrel.
Guys, don't forget, on this podcast, we like to talk about real estate, the current market, trends, tips, and tricks for consumers. But we do that while enjoying bourbon.
Yes,
right?
We do.
And that's the whole idea behind this is we just want to drink some good bourbon, share it with you, and then talk about real estate, give you some insights. If you're a real estate agent, if you're a consumer, any questions that you have, leave them in the comments for us or reach out to us. We'll give you our contact information at the end, and it's always on every video. But on today's episode, we're going to talk about what I think is one of the most commonly heard things from real estate agents.
Yep,
is, you know, should I rent or should I buy? You should always buy.
Should I stay or should I go now?
Right? Is what most people would expect realtors to say is buy all the time.
Yes.
Buy.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is take a little bit more of a deep dive into just some numbers, statistics that are going on, and then explain why you see a correlation between the housing market and the rental market. Because especially here in a place like Colorado, where we're seeing the difference in, you know, inventory growing in one area and almost being dead in another. It plays a lot into the market on both sides.
Yeah, and I think this is also a topic that it tends to fall into those like stupid idioms that you hear. So like the marry the house, date the rate, right? Yeah. You have rent versus buy, and they go, well, renting, you know, your was the one statistic I saw earlier was like the median wealth of a homeowner versus a renter was like 6,800% more median wealth for a home owner than it would be for a renter, right? Which you can skew the numbers. So I would like to go through and really dig deep, because with interest rates where they're at, there is an argument right now that renting does make more sense than purchasing for the most part.
And I think this is a good place to be with the conversation because, as I've told you guys on many episodes, I'm still renting. And currently just signed another lease for a year. But we'll go into that.
And I went from renting to purchasing because when I did it, it made sense based on the interest rates. So, we're not here to sit there and go, you should always buy, because it is not always the best decision. And we want to kind of dispel some of those rumors. And we pride ourselves on giving you guys straight and narrow information. We're not bullshitters. No. So if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And hopefully this answers some questions, and you guys can use whatever that information is to make good decision that's going to benefit you in the long run. So.
And I do want to preface this a little bit as well with markets are different across the board, guys. And it's, you know, we're here in really Colorado, but Colorado is completely different from Kansas, Kentucky, Missouri, Seattle, whatever, like Washington, wherever you are.
Sorry, where? Missouri? Are we, this is like the almonds conversation?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry, I still got a little bit
also,
of that.
It's pronounced misery.
Misery. That's what I've heard from people who live out there.
Right?
But no, it's... I just want it to be known that, you know, markets, especially these days, are so specific. So when we speak, don't forget, like, we're trying to go as broad as possible to just give you guys some more information. But it's also, you know, reach out to agents in your area and learn a little bit more about your market and what your area looks like.
Yep.
But before we start talking about that topic anymore, I am very, very excited because Jameson walked in with one of the most pretty bottles from one of the best companies that we have.
You know it.
Today we're going to be drinking Smoke Wagon's Bottled and Bond Rye.
Yes.
Right?
Bottled and Bond Rye. You want to give them a reminder what Bottled and Bond means?
So Bottled and Bond, just basic overview of it, is it's a regulation set in the United States that makes sure that bourbons have been aged for at least 3 years. And virtually all it really does is hold it to a standard. So we're not drinking the white lightning that made people go blind.
Yes.
That's exactly. An easy overview. But it gives for us at least, a good comparison, because when something's bottled in bond, you know that it's gone through the same procedure, it's been checked off by that certification. And Smoke Wagon, I mean, I don't think, did we have the rye? I think this is like...
We did. We had the small batch rye.
Yep.
We had the uncut, unfiltered. I think that's it. We haven't had the baby brother.
Nope.
And then we haven't, this is newer, so we haven't had this bottled in bond yet.
Interesting. Well, and just straight up, it's interesting because most Smoke Wagon bottles are darker. Yes. Just the bottles themselves.
Yes.
So it's weird because I saw this and I go, wow, this is pretty light. But now I want to know, Is this how light all their bourbons are? It's just in the bottle.
No,
makes it look
well,
darker?
yeah, except for the uncut. Uncut unfiltered is definitely
Yeah.
darker, but it's also aged for 7 years.
Yes.
So
I'll go ahead and pour it out while we're waiting.
Yep. So just as a primer again, if you guys are just watching this for the first time, Smoke Wagon is a distillery, but they don't have their own bourbon barrel aging process. Like they don't go from start to finish. They go out and they pick hand select barrels from Kentucky distilleries in Heaven Hills. And then they bring that to Las Vegas with their master distillers and mixers. They then put those barrels together to form all their different products, whether it's the uncut unfiltered, whether it's the bottled and bond. So it's a little bit unique the way they do it. But they come out with some really good flavors.
Yeah, really good stuff. Well, and
some
it just
of our
goes to show,
favorites.
like so many, I think a lot of people who drink bourbon, they don't realize that a lot of the bourbon that you drink, especially the reason we have so many different companies is because there's really like 3 main distillers.
Yep.
And then a lot of these companies will buy it from them and then apply their own differences, which I don't know. I think it's a great way to level the market.
It is. Yeah.
And I feel like it just gives those companies that do distill their own and put the time in a little bit more of a credibility.
Yep.
Except what companies like Smoke Wagon are able to do with other juices in their bottles and how they deal with it is amazing.
Yes.
And since this is a rye, Jim, what's the blend?
So it's 51% rye, 49% corn.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. Which will be interesting because it should be sweeter.
Yeah.
And to give you guys an example of just where they get their bottles from, Angel's Envy, Barrel Whiskey, Bell Mead, High West Distillery, and then Smooth Ambler Old Scout.
Huh. Interesting.
Which the High West makes sense because if you look at the bottle.
Yes. It's very, very similar.
Yes.
I do like the etchings though.
Yes.
Etchings on
exactly.
this bottle are always beautiful.
Yep.
And does it give any flavor notes, or do you want to go ahead and try and guess it?
So the flavor notes that we're seeing on here is going to be rich sweetness, black pepper and cinnamon spice with a creamy kind of flavor, rich with fruit and candy flavors, and that has a big, bold, complex, spicy finish.
Yeah. I was telling Jameson earlier before we started that it's so crazy to me now that I opened this bottle and I took just a whiff of it.
Yeah.
And just like we did with the Buffalo Trace, it was almost immediate. I was like, yeah, that's Smoke Wagon. Because of that unique blend, that spice with the sweetness to it, like that bread. What's the proof on this guy? Is it 90?
95?
95 proof? Awesome. Cheers, sir. I'm going to keep nosing it, but cheers. Yeah, it's interesting because the burn is there on the nose, especially for the 95, but it makes sense with the rye just because of how much more tart it normally is. The color on this guy is crazy. Like, I love it. But I'm getting the sweetness is definitely there. A little bit of the fruit.
Yeah.
A lot of bit of the fruit. Spices are, I can't tell.
It's 100 proof, not 95.
It's 100 proof.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 100 proof.
What's interesting is I've yet to be able to decipher the difference between the ethanol and the spices, at least on the nose. Because I feel like the spice is there.
That
like
black pepper comes through.
Yes,
Yeah.
I feel like it's the black pepper, which then adds to the burn. So it's like I don't know if it's
Yeah, but
ethanol or-
it's different. I mean, I don't know. It's
yeah,
a different
hard
burn.
To, yeah, it's hard to
different
pinpoint. And this
because you know why it's a different burn? It almost like triggers a sneeze.
yeah,
Like-
yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm saying. It's
Exactly.
got a black pepper.
So interesting.
Yeah. No, I'm getting. I'm getting that black pepper covers up the ethanol
Yeah,
because I can taste it in the back of my throat.
I feel the burn of the ethanol, but then
I can taste the pepper in the back of my throat.
It's wild. All right, first sip time. Smoke Wagon.
There's a reason. There's a reason it's one of our favorites.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
That spice though does linger.
The spice is there, and you can tell it's a rye because it has that tartness on the tongue.
Yep.
And that was the first sip. How bad was the burn on the first sip for you? 100 proof.
Not terrible.
It wasn't. It almost wasn't there compared to
No,
some other
because
ones.
that black pepper and cinnamon hits, and because it's so tart, like that's what I'm tasting. So I'm
Yeah.
not tasting the burn. I mean, maybe a little bit as it goes down, but it's not overpowering by any means for a 100 proof.
And I do like the caramel at first, then goes the vanilla, then the oak and the wood,
And then all the spice.
then the spice at the end, but then it sits sweet.
I do get the cinnamon in the very beginning, but it's blended with that vanilla a little bit.
And I think what I like, especially since we had that other rye, the other rye was sweeter. It had a good sweetness to it, but this I feel holds true to a rye, where the other one was kind of like, wait, is this
It's like
a
a
bourbon
hybrid.
or a rye?
Yeah, it's a hybrid.
Yeah.
No, this definitely keeps the character of that tart rye. Yep,
It's
I
on the
agree.
palate too, like on your tongue.
Yep.
It's wild. That is so crazy.
That is good.
Oh, I'm excited. Thanks for picking it up, JMO. I'm excited to sip this one while we talk about
So
it.
just realized I'm missing my.
Uh-oh, the
So
table.
You introduced. So I got to go
Yeah.
get that because I'm not going to be reaching over this barrel.
Right.
Put it on Oscar's head.
So, guys, like I said, on this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the housing market and rental market, how they correlate with each other and how they kind of lean on each other in some elements. The first thing that we kind of want to talk about a little bit is just renting in general, what we're seeing going on with renters, because what happened during the pandemic back in 2020, especially here in Colorado, is so many places put freezes on move outs and evictions and stuff like that. And we're still trying to get back from that.
Right.
But what that led to with rentals is, I think, a little bit of an inflation to their retention numbers and their basically what they do, everybody, is they have numbers where it shows how many people are living in the property versus what's available. And what we found is throughout the pandemic, it stayed, but that's because people weren't being forced out.
Well, they weren't being forced out, and if I remember correctly, like if I'm wrong, shout me out. But they put a cap on rent increases.
Yes.
During COVID as well. Like you couldn't just turn around and increase rent. I think the national average is like 1.5%, 2.5% per year. That was capped.
Yep.
So you had all these people that would normally be not forced to move out, but would be enticed to go find somewhere else or to upgrade because they're going, well, if I'm going to pay an extra 2.5%, if my rent's going to go up $400 a month in this current unit, I can go get a better apartment for that same $400 with more features, amenities, whatever it is, and then that would have skewed those numbers. But instead, because rent prices weren't going anywhere, people were hurting with income, they were unemployed, they were doing whatever, then you just stay.
Yep.
So
Well,
that makes sense.
And the reason I bring that up is because it leads into, like, with rental markets, it's a lot different than a housing market, only because, yes, housing markets are depicted on supply and demand, which we're experiencing, but apartments and rentals, they are reliant on supply and demand. Like, that's almost the only way that they can justify raising prices above the average is the supply versus demand. And
It's strictly because you don't have a down payment, right? Like if people can't buy a house, they have to rent.
Yep. And everybody listening, remember that statement. Remember that sentence, right?
If you can't buy a house, you have to rent.
Exactly.
It's not the other way around. So yes, it is. The rental market is predicated on supply and demand way more than the housing market is in certain aspects. Like housing markets, everything commodity wise is supply and demand. But that's why rent has stayed pretty consistent. Like just the market itself, the dynamics have stayed consistent regardless.
And guys, when we're talking about renting, we're not talking about the single family homes that are owned by, by landlords that are renting out. We're talking about apartment buildings and apartments, because at the end of the day, there are going to be more apartments, obviously, than there are homes, especially with what we're experiencing now with inventory. And that leads me into my next point of apartments. Like I said, we're kind of in a unique position right now where, because of the pandemic and we're dealing with that fallback of the apartment complexes had time to build more units and the demand went up. So then they went, nope, we got to build because the housing's not doing whatever it may be. Especially here in Colorado, we're in such a unique position because our housing inventory is low. So which normally that means, hey, apartments, they can put their prices up. But remember how I said supply and demand is the main element, right, guys? What we're seeing here in Colorado and Denver specifically is they're adding, what was it, 6.7%?
Yeah, between
more
6
units?
and 8%, depending on the report.
Yeah. So the numbers that I saw, at least from 2023 coming into 2024, is they're expecting at least 22,000 units.
Yep.
between the end of Q3 plus through 2024. Yep. And what you guys have to realize is that creates such a competitive market in rentals because let's say we weren't building apartments, right? Let's say we didn't have anywhere else for somebody to live if they couldn't buy a house. Then rent would go up because that's a hot commodity because supply and demand. There's a higher supply or the higher demand than there is supply. So what we're seeing now is at the time where normally the housing market would cause renting prices to go up because Denver as a whole has added that much and the inventory is skyrocketing based on the past, rent has actually come down.
Yes.
Like I actually saw in last year when I re-upped my lease in the apartment that I was in, they upped my rent by $100 or $200 just a month, right? But this year, and we did end up moving, but I'll get into that in a second. This year they only raised it by $75 total. And that right there, like when I got that, I was expecting another 200 jump, and I got that, and I was like, oh boy, like it got me excited.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, and I think the thing to understand is, to your point, housing affordability is horrible right now, which is going to force more people to rent, which would drive demand to apartments. But it is so much easier to build mass apartment complexes and faster than it is to build neighborhoods, right? For a lot of different reasons. Main one being infrastructure, right? If you think about it, and I don't know, if you take your apartment block, right? Yeah. There's probably 250 units, right?
I think it was 350 where we were.
350, right? 350 households is what you would say, right? Yep. So if I were to take those same and create 350 single family homes, one, I'd have to buy the land, which land is expensive and there's a lot of restrictions on land use in general for single family homes. Two, once I buy the land as a developer, I now have to come up with an entire plan on how to get water, sewer, electrical, any sort of utilities. I have to calculate property taxes, all these different things. I got to pave roads, right? I've got all this infrastructure. And then on top of that, you have these planned communities that want to be close to grocery stores and to medical offices and hospitals and schools and libraries and all of these different things. Versus if I buy a city block and I build up, I can have 350 units done within 6 months, right? The reason that's important is because, yes, demand is increasing as home affordability gets worse, but I can build them faster. So in one article, and again, shout out to John Burns, they do some great work. Q1 demand was the highest it's been in 10 years for apartments, right? Highest it's been, which you would assume rent's going to increase. But there was a record number of supply in Q1 across the country of 135,000 units being completed in Q1. Yep. So it essentially negated demand.
And that's just case in point right there.
Which means that your rent growth is going to slow.
Yep.
And your vacancy rates will actually increase, which also leads to rent growth slowing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing too is like if now, and this is something that I want a lot of people to think about in a sense of I'm going to rent an apartment. We want more apartments to be built. Obviously, as realtors, as homeowners, we want more homes to be built. But if you're renting, you want more apartments to come up because now apartment communities are going to start giving those months off, the first 2 months off. They're going to start giving the little concessions to you to get you to come in.
Yeah, so the U.S. apartments, the leasing demand is actually in the last 20 years. So the last time we've seen demand that high was back in 2000, Q1 of 2000. Wow. Was the last time we had the demand was 107,000 is what the demand was, but we built 135,000 units. Yeah. So rent growth year over year was basically flat at 0.2%.
It's just crazy to see how everything. I say it all the time, just how cyclical everything is, how it all plays into it, in the housing market, the rental market, whatever it may be. And so the reason that I said hold on to that little nugget earlier of what Jameson said, where it's you should always buy a house and it's cheaper. Is it cheaper to buy or sell a home? A lot of the time in the past, what we've seen is yes, it is cheaper to buy a home versus rent. Now, This is something that I want everybody to recognize. When you hear somebody say it's cheaper to buy a home than to rent, they are not talking month to month.
No.
They are talking the term of your home loan, right? And how that is calculated is you take your home loan and what you're going to get. Let's say you have a 30-year fixed conventional loan, and it's going to take you this 30 years to pay off that, quote unquote, pay off that loan. When we talk about it's cheaper to rent or cheaper to buy a home than to rent, that's when, if I were renting in that same period of time that I had owned the home, there's a point where it collides.
Yes.
And now, say you're saving money buying that home versus renting.
Right.
And that happens, it could happen in 3 years, could happen in 4 years, 5 years, but it's just something that I want to make very clear. When somebody says to you it's cheaper to buy a home than to rent, you cannot reference your monthly amount.
No.
Because that's not what we're talking about.
No.
Now, the reason I bring that up and the reason I said, my girlfriend and I moved apartments, but we decided to rent again, we are in a very unique scenario because my girlfriend is a leasing agent with a company. And so as a leasing agent with that company, she gets a discount on rent. So when we're sitting that back and we're going, am I going to buy a house? Okay, if I buy a house right now, it's going to cost me at least $2,800 a month if I go $350,000 townhome with the way rates are. Okay, but if we're only paying 18 something a month, you're telling me I can save $1,000 a month?
Right.
Cool. So after 1 year of saving that extra $1,000 a month, that's $12,000.
Well, let's do the math, right? So let's do the math.
Yeah.
So your current rent's how much?
Current. Let's do the old spot. It was $2,000 a month.
So $2,000 a month. Home price you'd buy $350, right?
Yep.
How much would you guys put down?
We put
Minimum?
down 3.5%.
Okay. Interest rates right now, we're over 7 after today. That's cool. HOA 250, roughly.
Yeah.
For a townhome.
I'll go 250.
And let's say, on average, I want to say $150,000 is on average like the gross monthly income.
Yep.
So homes right now are appreciating, call it 4%. Rent is, currently it's at 0.2. On average, historically, 2.5%.
Yep.
Right? And then home maintenance, you spend about 0.5% of whatever the price is. So if you were to look at where the break-even point is, right, buy cost versus rent cost, you're at about 4 years down the road is when it would make sense. And the reason that is, right, is because your mortgage payment stays the same. But here's why I disagree when somebody goes, well, it's a fixed cost with a mortgage versus you're at the mercy of your landlord with rent. And this is me as a realtor saying that's not entirely accurate for two big reasons. When they say your mortgage cost is fixed for 30 years, they're right. The principal and the interest. However, your insurance and your property taxes also go into that.
Yep.
And those have, especially in Colorado, have continually increased. Okay. My mortgage payment, for example, if I take my property insurance and my property taxes that got assessed this year, my mortgage payment just went up $250 a month.
Yep.
This year, right? So full transparency, I was paying about $28.50 a month for my house. I'm now paying $31.25 because my property taxes and my homeowner's insurance increased.
Yep.
Whereas if you're renting, your property taxes don't increase. So in that scenario, if my mortgage goes up $250 every 2 years, right, versus $200 every year, now that's where you have to take into account what that looks like.
Yes.
The other piece of this that people don't like to talk about, especially from the realtor standpoint, is with the house, and this includes home maintenance, right? So your big repairs and whatnot. But there's a lot of apartment complexes you don't pay for trash, you don't pay for water, you may not pay for other utility, electricity.
You don't have to worry about shoveling the snow or cutting the grass.
Yep. So there's also other hidden costs, and the big ones that I talk about are water and sewer and trash. My trash is $75 a month.
Even utilities.
And utilities, right? You got to have more high-speed internet, or you've got to do, your electrical bill or whatever it is. So it's not always true, I guess is what I'm saying. So if you have a realtor and you have these stupid, I hate this, right? Because I've probably been guilty of it when I first started, where it's like, well, I don't want to pay 7.5% interest on a house. Well, you're paying 100% interest to your landlord. So if you're renting, like, yeah, I get the narrative, right? But that kind of pisses me off because it's not entirely true.
Yeah.
Because if it was, realistically, homeownership would be at 100%, not 66% like it is, because it doesn't make sense for some people to purchase.
Yeah.
And I really don't love when people go, oh, well, it's a fixed cost. If you have a mortgage, you're locked in for 30 years. For the principal and interest, yes. But if you take into account property taxes and insurance, those two things will continue to increase as home values increase. That's how it works. If your home's now valued at $800,000, you're not going to be paying the same insurance as it was when it was $500,000. Same thing, you're not going to pay the same property taxes as it was. So it is something to consider.
Yeah.
Don't take at face value when you see these kind of splashy bullshit social media headlines where it's like, yep, it's fixed versus you're at the mercy of your landlord. It's not. It's individual, like we always say.
Well, and that's honestly what it comes down to, right? So let's take that example that we just made. $350,000 home, 3.5% down.
Correct.
So we're looking at, and you said it would take 4 years
4 years is the break even.
to break even.
So buy cost at 4 years for that scenario is $85,274.
Okay.
Your rent cost is up at $99,660. So it's between 3 and 4 years is when you break that even.
Yep.
And then after that point, now it's heavily skewed.
So now let me ask you. Now let's switch this up a little bit.
Okay.
So let's say I still want to buy a house for $350,000. Okay, but I looked at this and I went, oh, okay. So you're telling me that I could for 2 years I could save $12,000 a year, right? So that means in 2 years I'll have $24,000. So Jameson, can you do me a favor and change that down payment amount?
Sure.
From 3.5% to 10%.
Yep. Hold, please. Technical difficulties. Sorry, current rent still, well, in 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So your current rent was $2,000. So let's say in 2 years at, 1% is what? $20, 2% is 40. I don't know. Let's call it, if it's going up $100 a year.
Yeah.
So let's go your rent at that point is $2,300 a month. Let's say, right?
$2,300 a month.
Cool. Home price at that point in 2 years, so what's $350? So let's say the same one's now $360.
Yep.
And but your down payment is now dollar amount. It said $24,000, right?
Yep.
So $24,000. Okay. Assumptions stay the same. Let's go back 7.1%. And HOA again, call $250.
Yeah.
Right. And then $150,000 household. Go 4%. Compute. Now your break-even point is 2 years.
Boom. Let's cut it down, right? So, and that right there makes it a lot easier for me to bite. And here's the thing,
Actually,
guys.
less than that.
Yeah, this is going to be like 1.7.
Yeah, 1.7 years.
Yeah,
Somewhere around there.
right. So it still takes 2 years, but now that 2 years went to 4 years,
Right.
and you were able to save that money. But here's the cool thing: you can still only put down 3.5% if you want.
Yep.
I wanted to show that off because the amount of money that you can save in 2 years just by deciding to rent instead of buy, it is an okay idea to do, right? And like Jameson was saying, this is so individualistic to each person because you don't know what's going to happen, right? I started the video business and doing well, and let's say I get 1-2 good clients, my income just doubled maybe, right? And now I can show more, I can save more while I'm renting.
Yep.
You don't know what's going to happen, but by taking this base level information and going, wait a second, I could save $24,000 in 2 years, and again, this is if you hold yourself accountable and you do it correctly. Just because you're saving $1,000 a month doesn't mean you can get that extra car, right? If you plan for it, if you actually talk to somebody in finance or a real estate agent and plan for it, you can be a homeowner. And you wouldn't even have to put down all $24,000. You might even get to the table, talk with the lender, and go, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to put down $10,000. That I can manage that monthly payment."
Yep.
And now you have even more money to go. There's just so many options now that I can see, 10, 15 years ago when the housing market was like level and a little bit more predictable than it is now. Sure, absolutely.
Well, hell, even 3 years ago.
True.
Right? During COVID, when interest rates were 2.75%.
Yep.
I went from a 2-bed, 1-bath apartment that I was paying $1,800 a month, ground floor, to a 2,200 square foot single family, 3-bed, 2-bath with a backyard with 3.5% down, and my mortgage payment was $2,200 a month. So I was paying an extra $300 a month, $400 a month, but I had a single family home that was appreciating, and I only put down like barely anything.
Yeah.
Right. Because we use down payment assistance. So paid
But
that back when I sold the house. But at the end of the day, that made sense.
Yes. But it just goes to show too, it's I wonder, because, and again, guys, I know I talk about it all the time, but I came from the point of my financial mentality where it was like, whatever. I don't, if it happens, it happens. I don't need to know. But the second I got more financially literate and I put the work in to understand and learn it, the second that my plans started to become a little bit clearer and it got a little bit easier for me to understand what was going on, where my money was going, how it was going somewhere, right? And Jameson, you brought up a good point, talking about moving from an apartment to a house. For me, I don't know what would be worth it for you guys, but to be able to put up a shelf and not have to think about the fact that this may cost me an extra $100, to be able to go, you know what? I'd love to put a bookshelf in front of that, put some doors in it. Boom, I got my own little, private man cave. You can do that in an apartment, but you pulling all that wallpaper off, you're going to repaint it, right? Like, it gets to a point where you have to decide where the value sits for you. Because at this point, I'll be real with you. If I could get it into a home payment for $2,200 a month, $2,300 a month, absolutely, that would be worth the difference for me. But right now, for my girlfriend and I, it's just not in the cards to spend that extra $1,000 to $1,200 a month on a house.
Right.
And that's okay. Like, I want to tell everybody, like, that's okay. Waiting is okay. Not owning a home is okay as long as you're preparing to own a home.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's with any asset, right? Like, owning a home, if you're not an investor or flipper, and we've talked about this a ton, it's not a short-term game, right? It is I'm going to be here for at least 3 to 5 years. I'm going to then leverage what I've paid off and the home appreciation to either pull out a HELOC or a cash out refi to pay off debt and basically increase your income that way, or sell the home, buy something bigger because you're planning on having a family or you want a bigger yard or your job, whatever it is. If those are your plans, then yes, I will say it forever. We are not creating, well, unless you're Dubai, we are not creating more land.
Right?
Exactly. Unless you're Dubai, we're not creating more land. So home prices over the long run will always, always, always appreciate. Has it gone batshit crazy over the last 3 years? Yes. Is that normal? Absolutely not. 3 to 4% though is on average about right. And if you're talking about, equity wise in 6 years in that same scenario, Charlie, where we bought that $350,000 townhome, after 4 years, you've got $100,000 in equity.
Boom.
Right? That's $25,000 a year in 4 years. So you're essentially adding to your wealth, which is where the second point comes in, where people go, hey, the average wealth of a homeowner versus a renter, they are true. It's just not wealth in what you guys think, right? Like, you're not automatically worth $100,000 more dollars. Yes. You just have an asset that if you were to have to liquidate it, you would have at least $100,000 minus fees and all that kind of stuff to then parlay that money into something else, right? That's the goal. And if you're on that plan, great. If it's not for you right now, that's okay too. Then put a plan in place. I have a client right now that we're looking in Colorado Springs, and it's going to turn into, hey, well, let's wait 9 to 12 months, get everything set up. It'll be a little bit more expensive, but the point is, like, you want to hop on the train when you can. Yep. Because if it's now or if it's in 3 years, you just never want to not hop on the train, I guess.
Well, and the thing that kills me too, and I obviously, everybody listening, everybody watching, you're coming from a place of, oh, these are two guys that are just talking about it, out. They're in the market, they understand it, they're realtors, they want us to buy, and I understand that. But for me, the moment that it clicked, this whole rent versus buy scenario was when I was working for Samsung and I was on my way out. I was telling people, hey, I'm becoming a real estate agent. If I can help you, let me know. Really want to answer the questions. And I had an associate at a Costco up in Fort Collins. Yeah. And she, I would say, is early to mid 50s. And she started talking to me about how her and her husband had never owned a home. And she watched her parents do the same exact thing because they never thought it was doable. Right. And to see the pain and the look in her eyes when she said, like, my parents didn't have anything. Right. Like, that right there was a moment for me when she said, and I don't want to be like that. I want to have something. I want to be able to pass something on. Like, that was, for me, I went, okay, this is why it's important. Yeah. Right. Just to understand. And at the end of the day, they were talking with them. They were okay. They could have afforded at that time at least a townhouse, especially in Fort Collins, Loveland area, right? But because of that fear, the mountain that you stand in front of when you're thinking about buying a home and that 30-year fixed rate, like if you're a fan of The Office, right? There's a huge scene. I think it's end of season 1, maybe middle of season 2, where Michael buys a townhome, and Dwight talks to him and he goes, "Wow, you're probably gonna die before you pay this off." Like, that's what a lot of people think of. They go, "Oh my God, I'm 30, and you mean I'm gonna pay this off when I'm 60?" If you stay in it, right? Like if you make minimum payments, that's a way to think about it. Or you can go, or I can be in here for 10 years, gain my equity, flip it, sell it, even if I leave with an extra 50 grand. That's another down payment on a larger home. And that's where I love, if you guys please go reference, I think it's episode 3 or 4. JC talks about his clients that
he parlayed it into $1 million house.
Took them
5
from
years.
What was 8? I think he said the first home was 110,000 or something like that.
Yep.
And in less than 10 years, in less than a decade, he was putting these people into $1 million home. Like, that is a realtor success story that needs to be told and seen and understood by everybody.
Yeah, and I think there's 2, right? So there's one where the ultimate goal is the dream house with, the half acre and the big oak trees and whatever. And, right now it's not attainable, but the quickest way to get there, aside from coming into a ton of money or being
insurance scam, get hit by a car.
Or being the most disciplined, frugal, financial person to save, some article was like, "Oh, how this lady became a millionaire at 32. Well, she saved 70% of her income. Cool. Not very doable
realistic
for a lot of people, right? But the flip side of that, so you have the success story where you parlay your first townhome into your $1 million dream home 10 years later. That's success story number 1. The other way I look at it, right, is, and I'll just use myself as an example. We got in using down payment assistance in our first house, lived in it for 5 years, right? Sold it, made enough money to 1, pay off debt, 2, put down payment on our second house, which now our second house is big enough, right? Like no issue as far as size there goes. But, and I've owned that house now for 3.5 years, somewhere around there. Here's the other way I look at it, okay? Let's say something catastrophic happens, okay? Job-wise, employment-wise, whatever it is, where all of a sudden, like, I need money, okay? If I'm renting, okay, and something happens, I can't turn around and then sublet that apartment and make a ton of money to, like, pay off debt or get myself out of a hole. If things go sideways in my life, I've got an asset right now that I've only owned for 3.5 years. I could turn around, sell it, and make $200,000. Okay, and then if I wanted to, then I could go rent. But I would be renting with $200,000 in my bank account.
Yep.
It is a safety net for a lot of people because if you think about it, right, a 401k, can you pull out of it? Sure. But there's a penalty, and there's only a certain amount if you're under 59 and a half years old.
Something that got very popular over the last 5 years, IRAs.
Yep.
Same thing,
right? You could, I guess, be investing in Dogecoin.
Crypto.
And hope, right? Like, I've got my cousin has invested in Bitcoin since, like, 2010.
Good for him.
He's just got a shit ton of money. He's in good shape. But not everybody's like that, right?
Yeah.
But if you're owning a home specifically, there's that thing that people don't understand. Like, you're paying into it and your payment might be a little bit more. But at the end of the day, if something happens, you can turn around and sell that house and walk away with that equity as a safety net after 2 or 3 years versus after 2 or 3 years of renting. You don't have that safety net unless you've got some other financial vehicle that you're using.
Yep.
Versus the houses, you have that financial vehicle that you can live in, make memories in, you can upgrade, you can do all these different things, you can enjoy your time, so on and so forth. I could turn around right now, sell my house today in probably 2 weeks, maybe, make my $200,000, go put a first and last month's deposit on a 2-bed, 2-bath apartment that's good enough for 3 people and a dog, and then I have a safety net of $190,000 that I can then turn around, pay off all my debt. Now I'm debt free. I can restart the process. I can do whatever I want to do.
Yep.
If I'd been renting for the last 3 or 4 years, I don't have that safety net if everything goes to shit.
Well, and I'm sorry, but unless you're, to your point, and if you can, I don't know who right now, and I think the number might be growing, but Who can honestly say that they have an amount in their account right now that is equal to, let's again, low end, 350,000, okay? And then they are now also putting it into a CD, an IRA, whatever it may be. What else can you guarantee is going to make you 3 to 5% on that money year over year?
Right.
Like, and I think that's an important note to what you're referencing is, at the end of the day, houses, yes, they're expensive. The pricing is going up, but the overall thought of owning that asset and having something is game changing, right? And something that I do want to bring up, and I know we said, obviously it's individual, rent, buy, own. Why do you guys think that so many older people that are 65 and up, why do you think they go, yeah, I'm just going to sell this and move to a community? Because of the leisure. Right. They don't have, they've spent the last 30 years maintaining a yard, changing out water heaters, changing air filters, all of that stuff. Now to just be able to go, look at me, I just sold my house for $500,000. Yeah, I still owed $200,000, but guess what? I have $300,000 in my account. I can die happy, and I don't have to do anything, right? Like and I think it's because we're as a young millennial, I think our generation is so short-minded. Yeah. And we have been, and that's not a negative thing.
Short-sighted.
Short-sighted, yeah. And again, you guys have heard me, Jameson was a key catalyst for me getting to that point when I worked for him at Best Buy. But if we can just take it and bite it down and go, yeah, I might be writing this for 30 years, but what I can do with that in 10 years, in 5 years, and actually understand, like, and this to me is the best piece of advice that I ever got when it comes to time. And it's very simple. Time is going to pass whether you want it to or not.
Yes.
Right? So whether you're renting for 5 years, or if you buy a home and you're paying an extra $300, $400 a month for 2 years, those 2 years are going to pass anyway. But in those 2 years, you're going to make $20,000 to $30,000 on that asset versus spending it. Like that is what the whole culmination of don't rent, buy is. Yes. And I think it's harder these days because of how much we're struggling in the housing market. Like because it's hard for people. We're not and I can't even say we're not making enough because wage growth outpaced rentals for
for 15 months in a row. But I mean, that's the hard part because it's outpaced it, but it's way behind if you look and zoom out over the last 3 years. I mean, if home prices have gone up 50%, wages have only gone up 23%. Like it's not a thing.
But that's exactly my point. It's making it harder because, like I said in the past, you could say, oh, rent, always better to buy versus rent. But now we're at a point where it's like, wait a second.
No, it's the statistic I read was, and this is true from everything I've seen, is buying right now is 60% more expensive than renting on a month-to-month basis. And if you are in the scenario where you have to be in a month-to-month basis to live and survive and afford life right now, then by all means, do not buy a home. I am saying do not purchase a home.
Second.
Okay? However, understand that you also don't want to get caught into this cycle of rent unless it makes sense for your specific scenario.
We just moved into an apartment.
Right.
For the first time in my adult life since I turned 18, I have a garage.
Right.
Like, think about that, people. I'm 30. I started renting when I was 18.
Yeah.
Right? And yes, I'm still young. I understand that. But at the same time, to say, like, my girlfriend and I can now do one thing that we love, which is go get furniture, clean it up, redo it, and sell it, give it away, whatever it may be. But that right there, I can't tell you how excited I am that I have a garage. Right. And like how many homes aren't going to have a garage? Obviously townhome, condo, but if you're buying a single family home, most of them have some kind of a garage. And it just goes to show right there. It's like, just recognize that it's there. It is a possibility. Maybe not right now, but if you put the plan in place, you will get there.
Right. And I think that's where your point rings true. Is the short-sightedness is, well, all these realtors are telling me to buy. No, when I'm telling you to buy, when I'm telling a client, hey, this is why homeownership makes sense. It is not it makes sense right now for you in this moment. It is over the next 30 years of your life. It will make more sense a majority of the time to own a home versus renting a home. A majority of the time. There are people that are nomads or that are they've got, remote work and they like to travel and do all these things. They don't want to be tied down. Maybe they're the dinks, right?
Yep.
Dual income, no kid, where they want to take their vacations and not have to worry about A, B, and C. I've got some friends from high school that I envy them. They're living in Italy right now, but they've lived in Australia and they've lived in Thailand and all these different things, and that's their life. They don't have any kids, right? They go work, and then whenever they go to a new country, they find jobs there and then support themselves financially. And right now they're in Capri, right?
I have to talk to these
and
people.
I'm sitting there, I'm like, dude, you know what? But I've got a kid, I've got a dog. I can't do that, right? So for me, it makes sense. For some people, it may not, which is totally fine. This conversation is specifically geared towards the people that it will eventually make sense for them in their life. And our entire point is, don't look at it short-sighted. Put a plan in place. And we talked about it, and I want to bring this point up real quick, where you said, and we say this all the time, real estate's hyper-local, right?
Yes.
Throughout the market, I've got a map right now of the United States that has the difference between the median mortgage payment and median monthly rent per state, okay? And they range, difference-wise, from, I'm going to try and find the lowest one here. It's probably going to be somewhere around Missouri. It's actually Arkansas, but
Arkansas.
Arkansas. Oh no, it's Florida actually.
Okay.
Which that makes sense because Florida's
Yes.
rent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Florida, the difference between average rent versus mortgage is $317. Okay.
That's a lot lower than I thought it was.
Hold on. So this is why, if you reverse 30 minutes, when they say mortgage is fixed, this does not take into account property tax and homeowners insurance.
Which in Florida,
it's just the mortgage. So if you had property tax in Florida, for example, you're talking $10,000 a year on average. It's $120 a month,
something like that.
and then your insurance is upwards of another $300 extra a month. So that gap widens, right? Same with New York. I was looking at some places in Rochester, right?
Yeah.
So for all my northern New York folk, Rochester has some very affordable housing. You can get a really nice place on 2 acres
Your quality of life, though.
for right, especially in the winter. For like $700,000, you can get like a 5-bed, 4-bath, 4,700 square foot on an acre in the countryside, beautiful colonial home for $700,000, right? Your property taxes annually are $19,000 a year.
Yep.
That's insane.
Yep.
Our property taxes here, my house, which is also worth $700,000, $3,200 a year versus $19,000.
There's a reason why my parents moved out of New York.
So, but that's my point, right? So it's very, very hyper local. If you look at Colorado, Colorado's difference in the West Coast is $490 is the difference between your median rent versus your median mortgage payment. So the point is that $500 extra a month over the long term, does it make sense for your plan and your family's plan or whatever it is, or does it not? That's really it. Because all I'll tell you is that gap, we don't know where it's going to go, but we do know where house values are going to go, and they're going to continue to go up.
Yes.
Which means if you're paying into it, you are going to continue to be worth more money over the long run.
Absolutely. And it's just, again, it coming from a place of, like I said, and it's I wish you guys knew me before I started this podcast and all this, because like I was that person. I would watch these clips on social media and be like, fuck you. You know, you're just trying to get me to buy your piece of shit. I would, 100%. But again, taking the time to learn it and break down the numbers and understand it, that's why I can confidently say it's not good for me and my girlfriend to buy right now. It's just not a good thing to do. I can say it confidently, but I turn around and go, but we're planning. Right? And I think this whole episode is really just, for me, I just want to break that stigma of real estate agents are always trying to shove houses down your throat. Like, it's just, and again, we're people too, right? You know, and it's, trust me, it's real weird for me to sell people houses and be renting. But I know that, again, it's not time for me right now, but it is time for them. So let me make sure that I do the best possible work to get them a place that's going to do well for them. And they're not going to be house poor once they get in.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I mean, we could go stat for stat forever. But, you know, I there's so many success stories of home ownership, and it does so many things for people financially, mentally, you know, in an emotional space, all these different things, because I go out every day, right, on my back patio, and yes, I have, you know, neighbors and whatnot. But I sit out there and
Yeah,
it's
but
my
that picture you posted of the glass of bourbon,
dude,
with
it's
come
my
on, bro.
space. You know what
I
I'm saying? Like
yeah.
I can go out there and enjoy it, and I also know that yes, I'm paying more than I would renting, but I know that again in the back of my head, I've either got the world's greatest safety net
Yep.
financially, or I've got something that if and when I make more money or whatever it is, and I move on from that house, I can rent it to you guys, and you guys can pay my mortgage.
It's funny because
I'm not trying to be a dick,
No,
but at the
but
same
yeah.
time, like because I own my home, I do have that option. Where right now, like I said, my mortgage payment went up to $3,100, $3,200 a month, but per the market rent in my area with the size of my house, I can rent it for about $3,900 a month, which means that even if I pay a property management company $600 a month to manage it for me, and I'm just breaking even, all that means to me is somebody else is paying off my principal, and I can do that for as long as I want. And then now I've gained, the beauty of it is let's say I rent it for 5 years, right? Let's say I gain $175,000 in equity in those 5 years. The crazy part is if I rent it out, that 175 is free money because I haven't been paying into it. Somebody else has been paying it, right? That's the opportunity that I want people to understand, whether it's the time right now or the time in 5 years. Put the plan in place so you at least have the option to do that eventually.
Yep. And on that note, one thing I need people to understand is that this has been a concept since real estate became a thing.
Well, there's a reason that the number one creator of millionaires is
real
real
estate.
estate.
Yeah, but the reason I say it like that is because I feel like social media and the bubble has created such an urgency around landlords are evil, and they're trying, and it's like, I get it. Some landlords do the landlord special, some paint over outlets, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, this is not new. People buying homes to rent them out is not a new thing. It has just gotten more visibility because of how difficult it is and how much communication we have between each other. So like, don't vilify every landlord that you see, because at the end of the day, there are so many people that grew up that this is my financial safety net. This is my plan. And yeah, it sucks as a renter that they're charging what they're charging, but that's based on the market. And again, there are landlords out there that are shit, that should not be landlords, should not be renting. But you have laws and regulations and rules in front of you. If you think they're not doing something right, reach out to a real estate agent, reach out to a leasing agent, reach out and ask them questions. Hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Can they be doing this?
Right.
Go that route. Don't just automatically yell and be angry that people are renting, because it's going to happen regardless of if BlackRock is doing it and all these major companies are doing it, or if Jameson or I or you buy a property and rent it out. It's going to happen because that's just what it is. And I'm sorry, but it's not going away.
No.
They will not tell people you cannot buy a house and rent it out. They will not. It just won't happen.
No, I agree with you 100% because supply and demand. I mean, it actually benefits renters for single-family homes to be rented out.
Yep.
Because then it puts
Drops
downward
price.
pressure on rental prices.
Exactly.
Right? It's the whole reason there's build-to-rent communities that are coming alive right now.
Yep.
Where you've got developers that are just building neighborhoods for the sole purpose of renting. And the reason why they're doing that is because the demand from the population is, I can't afford to buy, but I also don't want to live stacked on top of 7 people and take an elevator up to the 8th floor and whatever. I want amenities and everything, but I want to feel like I'm in a neighborhood.
Yep.
And the builders go, okay, well, if we build you a neighborhood with single-family homes, with amenities and all these different things, will you rent them? And people are going, yes, I will.
Yes, I will.
Okay. So if you're the people going, yes, I will, don't hate the player, hate the game. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, right?
Absolutely.
Or learn to play the game.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing that I want, that we want to get across is understand what it means, how to put a plan in place. I talk about this all the time. So here's a quick tip. So Charlie, you're renting. Your rent is $2,000 a month.
Yep.
Right. And you just said that you're at a $350,000, $400,000 condo, townhome, whatever, would be around $2,800 a month. Right. So the challenge would be, okay, how do I get to that point?
Yep.
Well, what you do is you sit down. If it's just you, cool. If it's you and your partner, awesome. And you go, okay, we pay $2,000 a month. If we want to buy something, it's going to cost us $2,800. So how do we get used to that? Well, take $800 a month and put it to the side. right? You could put it in a high yield savings account, whatever you want to do, but pretend for a year that you're paying $2,800 a month. And the beauty of it is, if you can automate that, then you will automatically change your habits because money's a finite resource. Like you're not going to go out to eat if you have no money. You're not going to, you know what I mean? You do that for a year. Now all of a sudden you've saved $10,000. You do it for 2 years, you save $20,000. Not only have you saved enough for a down payment, but you've adjusted your personal finances to afford $2,800 a month so that when you do jump in to that townhome or condo or starter home or whatever it is from an apartment, it's not going to feel like a massive change because you've already been essentially paying $2,800 a month. You just put that money to work for you. And then you go and you go, oh, this is easy. That's it. Like it's a very simple thing that you can do. I'm not saying everybody can save $800 a month, but if that's what the goal is and you can do it, put it in practice, automate it, and then you'll be ready within a time frame probably sooner than you really think to make that leap.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing too, because I can already see once we post one great, that was a great clip. That was a great note. Yeah. But I already know once we post this, it's going to be like, well, you just want me to save an extra $800 a month? Yo, if you can't do it, you can't do it.
Well, and if you can't do it, you shouldn't be looking to buy a house anyway.
Exactly.
So then just keep scrolling.
Yes, but that's the whole thing is like, if you can't do it, you can't do it. But the best things in life that you get aren't easy. Like the people that made that are self-made. We're not talking about like Trump over here, but people who are truly self-made that put the work in and made that money. They will tell you that the struggle is the juice is worth the squeeze.
Dude, I itemized my taxes 2 days ago, and I was going through all my expenses, right? And obviously, I'm a realtor, so my expense is marketing.
Yep.
Do you know, just on automated marketing materials, office supplies to support marketing, etc., over the last 9 months, I've spent over $27,000. Okay?
Woo, doggy.
Being fully transparent. I could probably, and I'm going to, this as soon as I file my taxes, go back through my marketing budget, and I'm correlating this to like a personal budget, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through my marketing budget and go, okay, what worked, what didn't? Where of that $27,000, where was I getting leads from? If it's not working, I cut that out.
Yep.
Guarantee you, over 6 months, $27,000. You guys can do the math. How much per month I'm spending? I could find $500 easily that I could then turn around and just save, right?
Yep.
From a personal finance standpoint, I think it's the same thing. If you really itemize and go, okay, well, I went out to dinner twice a week, and then this week I DoorDash. We talked about this last episode or 2 episodes ago, right?
DoorDash,
like whatever it is, you can sit there and go, I could also like just go to the grocery store and buy food to make and meal prep and do whatever. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna tell you, man. Like, I know it's a joke that boomers are like, oh, well, millennials spend money on avocado toast. Stop fucking spending money on delivering shit from Uber Eats and DoorDash. If you're trying to save money, stop. Just stop. I can't. I'm sorry, but the extra fucking $15 that they charge you for your meal, so you don't have to get up. Stop. Like I can't.
But my point is, like, when we say, oh, people are going to say, oh,
Yes.
you want me to save $800 a month? I would challenge you to just go through what you spend on a monthly basis that would be deemed superfluous, right? If Oscar was here, I'd define it for him. But and see what number you come up with, and then whatever that number is, maybe make it a goal to save 75% of it, so you still can spend. Because I'm a guy that I like to reward myself and do nice things. I golf, I do all these different things, right? If I didn't golf last summer, I mean, bro, that would have been.
I tell people
$4,000, like easily. But I enjoy it. It's a mental break. It helps me. Like, there's a lot of different things. It's a business connection. I've met a lot of great people. But I have eliminated $4,000 to $5,000 last year. I'm just not golfing.
I laugh all the time because I told this to Alicia after it sold or helped the clients buy the townhouse. Yeah, we celebrated. Right? We went out. Yeah, cool. Yeah. I got my commission. Let's go celebrate. We went to the same restaurant that we've been going to for the last 2 years. Yeah, and it's just. That's what's nice to me. That's value to me. Yeah. And it's like, at the same time, yo, if I could go buy a joint for $10, drive up to the mountains, sit in my car and look at that view, boom, celebration. Like, it just comes down to like really understanding your finances and breaking it down, like Jameson is saying, and going, where can I sacrifice for at least a year or two in order to make this goal that I want come true? Yep. And that's really all it comes down to.
Agreed.
Right? But I think this is a great time to move into the one rock takeaway for today's episode. I think that's what we've been doing the last couple minutes here.
Yeah.
But you want to take it? You want me to take it?
Go first.
All right.
Yeah.
My one rock takeaway, it's going to take sacrifices to achieve the life that you want. Become okay with it, or you will not achieve that life.
My one rock takeaway is stop blaming everything else unless you're running for office. Right? Like, because I know how this goes. I know the comments we're going to get. And there's going to be a lot of, oh, this is bullshit and blah, blah, blah. And this is not my fault and yada, yada, yada. And you know what? You're probably right. There is a vast majority of what the Fed has done and what our economy has done that it is not your fault. However, unless you are in a position to change it at the legislative level, your job is to figure out how to play the game to your advantage.
You can only control what you can control.
Exactly. So I understand the frustration, but if you take that energy and you, I forget what the word is, but there's a way like to transmutate. Hey, there it is. If you transmutate that anger and that frustration into a solution for you with the help of professionals like us, for example, you will be better off 5 years down the line than just railing about it online and saying, you're just forcing us to buy a house because you make money when we buy. Okay, sure. We do. You're right. Yep. Absolutely. But you know what? Your auto mechanic also makes money every time you buy a $900 a month car.
DoorDash makes money specifically because you don't want to get off your ass and go pick up food that's 5 minutes away. I'm sorry, I can't.
Hashtag facts. So yeah, just transmute the energy. Utilize the tools around you, the knowledge around you, to make sure that it makes sense to you. And my last one rock takeaway is I will never be the person, and I'm going to speak for Charlie on this because I know 100% he's in the same boat. I will never be the realtor that goes, you have to buy now. I will be the realtor that goes, if it is a good decision for your situation, absolutely we need to consider it. If it's not, cool, let's put a plan in place because I truly believe that over the long term, it makes so much sense to own something rather than rent something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And our job is to get you there. That's it.
That's right. That's all our job is to get you there. Yeah, do we make money doing it? Absolutely.
But that's because it's our job.
Yep.
That's it.
And I can't tell you just how great it is to see somebody buy a house that has been preparing for it.
I know. It's
been waiting
amazing.
for it.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. But on that note, I think it's time to move in to the Bourbon Review.
Give us a recap. How do we bourbon review?
We bourbon review by giving it a rating of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, 1 being the best. Haven't had a 1 yet. But the reason we do that and call it a rock rating is because the more rocks, the more ice you put in a bourbon in a drink, usually the worse it is because you got to water it down to take a sip. But on that note, Smoke Wagon Rye.
It's
Bottle and Bond.
It's like
a hug.
Like a what?
It's like a nice hug.
It is. I'm just
It's like a nice hug.
I'm trying to compare it to like, I don't know. It's just so consistent. It's consistently good.
Yes.
Like if somebody goes, hey, I want to buy a nice bottle of bourbon. I don't want to break the bank, right? Like I don't want to pap you. I don't want to spend $120 on whatever, but I want something that's just going to be good. And I go, you should try Smoke Wagon. And then they say, well, which one? Because there's like 8. And I would say, yes. I just would.
Agree with you.
I just would, right?
Yeah.
And I like obviously I'm not a bourbon or whiskey snob by any means, but I'm sure there's a lot of, True Bloods that are like,
I've been saying
well,
that, but I'm being real with you, dude.
If it's not, well, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's not distilled and made in Kentucky or
like,
Tennessee,
no, not
they
that,
don't blah,
but-
blah, blah. They don't mix their own grain. No, dude, I get, like, there's a place to do that, which I think there are a lot of bourbons
Which is
we've
in
had.
Kentucky.
Right, but I'm saying there's a lot of bourbons that we've had that do that really well.
Yes.
Right? But I also think that these guys are going, hey, you know what? Here's the deal. We're going to let them do the hard work. We're going to then take that and make something even better. Fuck it. I just figured it out.
Okay.
Smoke Wagon to me is like Apple. Okay?
Fair comparison.
Bear with me.
Fair. No,
How many times, for all my techies that are watching this on an iPhone or on a Samsung, right? Every time Apple comes out with a new feature, what do the Samsung users say?
We've had that for the last 5
Awesome.
years.
What do the LG users say? We've had it for the last 5 years. What do the Huawei people say? We've had it. HTC, same thing, right?
Yeah.
Cool. That's great. Who took all of those innovations and packaged it into a device that is in more, at least in the US anyway, more hands, right? Like the most highly rated device or product line on one of the most valuable companies on the planet. Because Apple sits there and goes, you know what? I want you guys to do all the hard work. We're going to then take that and we're going to package it into something that people will absolutely fucking love.
People out there spending $3,000 for the Apple Vision Pros when Meta has like the same. But that's a case in point, right?
And they did it what? It took them 3 years.
Yeah.
4 years.
And they're charging $3,000 for it.
And people are buying it.
They are.
And it's had rave reviews.
They're buying it and jumping out of planes with it and driving on the subway with it.
But that's what this reminds me of.
Yes.
It's like you're not going to buy an iPhone and go, oh, this is trash compared to the last iPhone. It's like, oh, it's incrementally better every single time, but it's consistent across the board. iPhone to Apple Watch to iPad to MacBook, it all works together. They all have something different, and every single one of them borrows technology from some of the best companies in the world.
Yep.
To me, that's what Smoke Wagon is.
Yeah.
Smoke Wagon is the Apple of bourbon.
I like it. It's a good comparison. They'd
Right?
be happy to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one. Smoke Wagon, let us know. I'm going to tag you in this.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Just saying.
But no, honestly, I mean, for a rye, and I think that this does a phenomenal job of, with the sweetness and what they do, cutting that tinge and it's almost like a sponge that most rye has when it sits on your palate, and it just sucks the moisture out. This, it still has it. It's there. I feel the tartness, but that sweetness that sits, that caramel it makes it a nice drink. It makes it a nice sipper. Like I would, again, not a rye fan because most of them are dry and a little bit more peaty, but I would take this and share it with friends and family. I would take this on a night out. And because of that blend, you said 51, 49, 51 rye, 49, it has the sweetness, but it's not syrup.
Nope.
It's not heavy on the palate. It's light, and the aftertaste makes you want another sip. And I think that's where Smoke Wagon really shines through. And like I said at the beginning, it's gotten to the point now where I pop the bottle and I smell it up. It's a Smoke Wagon. Like I know I can smell the blend.
Yeah.
Right. Like they are known because the complexity that they have in there, the way that it evolves, but then I think for me, it's how it sits on the palate. Every single Smoke Wagon it's not, you drink it and then you get that that stale bourbon, taste where it's just the corn or it's just the wheat.
It gets old after a couple.
This is just, wow. Like, if I had another sip, I could refresh this and then sit here for another 20 minutes.
Yep.
I like it.
Yeah, I think to me, of the ryes that we've had, like I think it's the most balanced rye that we've had, including the small batch rye of Smoke Wagon.
Yes.
Like this bottled and bond is different. It is, that small batch rye was a true rye.
Yes.
Where it was dry.
It was dry.
It was good. We rated it really high. I think it was like a 3-ish is what we rated it at. But this, with the balance of the sweetness with that corn, but it doesn't maybe this is me, right? Whenever we've had a high corn mash bill, I feel like every time over the course of the episode, it has not degraded, but it started out where it's like, okay, it's a rye, to, okay, now it's something different.
Yeah.
And it's just sweet.
Yeah.
Right? And then the corn comes through. This has balanced it for the last hour and 10 minutes.
And actually, I want to go ahead and nose up JC's glass here because I'm interested. That's crazy. So JC's glass, for everybody who's just listening for the first time, we leave JC's pour on the table, so his is open. It airs through the entire episode. I mean, the leather that comes through on his glass, like the spice is dissipated, the burn dissipated, but it's that leather wood.
Cowhide.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a testament.
Oh, yeah.
Just to Smoke Wagon and how it evolves. It's, again, we say it's hard all the time because obviously, we wouldn't want to put any rocks in it. Yeah.
Slightly sweeter.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now that it's sat,
I'm gonna take it,
open,
yeah.
slightly sweeter. The caramel comes through in the end a little bit,
See this?
but it's still
Wow. Hit you with a little bit of citrus at front, then the spice, and I think that's where a smoke wagon really hits it.
Yep.
Is the spice that they have, because like I was saying at the beginning, the spice blends with that burn of the ethanol, but it's a flavor. It's not
is.
a burn. It's a flavor.
No, it's a flavor.
Yeah.
So I was saying when I was sniffing it,
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, it burns the nostrils. It's I feel like I just sniffed a jar of pepper.
Yeah.
And it hit the back of my throat.
All right. So I'm gonna go ahead, and I don't think that I can get past the 2.5 mark with it.
Yeah.
I don't think I can, just because again I love the complexity of it. I love where it sits. Just having other smoke wagons, I think the blend of this one leads it to be a little sweeter on the back end, which again I like. But comparing it to bourbon, bourbon drinkers, the guys in Kentucky, whatever they may say, I think this would sit a little bit too sweet on the palate. But I think I'm gonna sit right at about a 2.8.
Yeah. That's where I was.
Yeah.
I think the uncut, unfiltered was a 2.5, which again, you just can't, it's 110 proof.
Yeah.
It's very, very different. It's a completely different bourbon. But I think a 2.8, one of the best ryes, if not the best rye we've had.
Yeah.
And I think it's a rye that appeals to a lot of people, number one, right? Dry palate, sweet palate. I also think this is something that would make a fantastic cocktail because of the sweet undertones, but it still holds its rye character throughout the entire pour.
I would give this rye to somebody who was like starting in bourbon and say, hey, this should be a good intro to rye.
Yep.
Then after this one, go to a full rye. And I can't remember the name of it, and I got to get better at checking this before, but the rye that we had, was it 2 weeks ago? That one, we were surprised because of how much it tasted like bourbon as a rye. But even at that, it didn't have complexity.
It was Riverside or Riverset from Blue Note.
Yep. So it kind of went, that rye went, Pete, boom, sweet, and just shot
It
there.
like fell off a cliff.
Yeah. Whereas
This is just
with the sips,
steady Eddie.
it's steady, but the evolution of the flavor is there.
Correct,
Versus
yes.
it going rye,
Right.
boom, sweet corn. It's dryness, sweetness, oakiness, and then spice, and then back sit on sweet. So I think, this one, I think we rated that one a 3.1 or 3.0.
3, yeah, somewhere around there.
think so.
It was over a 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
But
good. It was over 3 though.
putting this one right there at 2.8 for sure.
Yeah.
And guys, remember, thank you so much for joining us on another episode. We appreciate you guys being with us. Oscar, excited for you to come back from
See you next
Detroit,
week,
my man.
Brett.
But remember, guys, you can always reach us at our own socials. Mine is That Lifting Agent or The Lifting Agent on TikTok and Instagram. Jameson.
The Colorado Real Estate Guy, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
And Oscar is Oscar the Realtor, OscarTheRealtor.com. And guys, remember, if you have any questions, please leave a like, comment, follow the YouTube channel, follow the TikTok. Let us know topics, any questions that you have if you want us to cover it. We're going to get back to the live here in a couple weeks, if not next week. But you can always reach out to us. Send us an email, resotr@themilehighperspective.com, or give us a text or a phone call.
Yep, 303-578-0263.
And on that note, we will catch you guys on another episode.
Catch you on the flip side.
Catch you on the flip side. Adeuces.